right, everybody, we're back. I just want to tell you all, go over to Travel Story Society. Maddie's got season 2 coming up. Maddie, tell them a little bit about what you got coming.
So the Travel Story Society is a website and a podcast that I run with my girlfriend Cynthia, and the season 2 of the podcast is coming out. Our premiere is on the 12th of October, where we've got 3 massive travelers coming on to talk about their favorite travel stories. We ask them simple questions that then get them to talk about their stories in more detail. We have the author of one of the National Geographic's best-selling books. The National Geographic's Book of the Year for 2019 is coming on the show this season, so check that out. And then we've got some other podcasters and some great travel stories coming your way. So if you like traveling and you've missed it during COVID, we're the place to come to hear loads of travel stories, and check out the blog as well. That's www.travelstorysociety.com for more on that.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jay. He's Maddie. This is Yankee and the Brit Sports Talk. And today I don't have the pep I usually have for you, because we're going to start with the fact that my Minnesota Vikings got smacked in the mouth. And the thing that bothers me the most is that there's nothing to blame except for the Vikings. And, you know, not that you want something to blame, but you always want that one thing to grasp on. And they had a million chances to win that game. And before I tell you what I think the solution is in Minnesota, let's hear what you thought about the game.
I think the simple solution is in Minnesota is that they lost to the Browns. Is that, like, the Browns are a good football team. Like, a lot of people are saying that the Browns could be AFC championships, or the AFC championship team at the start of the year. And the Vikings offensive line is better than it has been, but it's not good. Like, it's,
always
consistent.
Protecting the left guard, because Darrisaw's still out. We don't know what we have for him, so we got to keep protecting the left guard with chips and running back.
Yeah, and we said that last week. We said Myles Garrett will find the hole, like, or Jadeveon Clowney will find the hole. And it was a big defensive game. It was 2 teams playing very similar systems. I thought Cousins, I'm not going to blame him for the loss, but he just made a couple of bad decisions with the ball.
One thing,
throws.
When you text me and said that was a bad choice, I get where you're coming from, but as the guy watching that whole game, you had to do something. So I was not mad at you throwing at your best receiver. Yeah. Even though he was covered, you just, at that point, you have to make a play. And I'm sure on the sidelines, they told Cousins, go make a fucking play. Yeah. So I wasn't mad at him for that. Where I get people are going to blame him, that's the Cousins dumbass move. And I always say Cousins makes dumbass moves, but I was okay with that one. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it wasn't the worst decision I've ever seen. Obviously, I watch the games like that on Red Zone a lot of the Vikings-Browns game due to the fact that obviously it was 14-7, so there wasn't a lot of time in the red zone for anybody. But from what I saw it as, it was a bit of desperation, and you just, when you're trying to make a play, you can't also then hand them the ball. But I mean, it didn't bite them back with anything. So Cousins definitely isn't the reason that they lost. How I see it is their offensive line needs a bit more improvement, and it was the Browns, and the Browns could be AFC champions this year. And that's not out of the realms of possibility. I think it's more doom and gloom for the Vikings because of the 2 games that they lost earlier. And they still, the Vikings are a team that could still be 4-0, but they're not.
Well, I find that both teams' offenses played like shit. And I know people are going to go, oh, it was a defensive game. And it was at times. Some good defensive plays were made, but running backs left a lot of yards on the field for both teams. Quarterbacks left a lot of yards. There was passes that should have been caught that weren't. Like, I just feel like both teams were a little bit sloppy. But for me, so I was going through the Vikings schedule. And so at best in the next 8 games, at best, the Vikings go 5-3, okay? Which puts them at 6-6. And then if you go to the rest of the schedule, they're lucky if they finish 9-8. Okay. And with the 9-8 schedule, who knows what this new like set up 17 games, new or more playoff teams starting last year. What'll happen? But I have this odd suspicion the Vikings missed the playoffs. If they miss the playoffs, I think Zimmer gets fired. So here is where I think the Vikings should go, and they won't. But after watching the Steelers play and how fucking garbage Ben Roethlisberger is, he can't even throw the ball 25 yards anymore.
Yeah.
Trade fucking Cousins right now to the Steelers for like a second, a fifth, and Dwayne Haskins. And not that Haskins is the answer, but then you got another young quarterback. Let Mon develop, getting his ass whooped for the rest of the year, because at best you got Cousins next year. That's it. You're not going to pay him $45 million a year.
And that's not because you dislike Cousins. You're still big on Cousins.
Yeah, I just don't think he's worth $45 million a year and hurt the rest of the team. So that at this point, I say you find a team like that, or you hold on to him, and God forbid a guy like Matt Stafford gets knocked out for 6 games. And, the Rams don't care about draft picks. So they give you a second to save their season, right? So I think it's time to think about moving Cousins for some, not even, and the draft picks are great, but not even so much for the draft picks, for the cap relief coming up. Yeah. That's just my suggestion. That will never happen, because Zimmer and Spielman know if they don't make the playoffs, it's probably their job. Yeah,
and they could trade Cousins at the end of the year anyway, if they decided to. If they decided that's the route they want to go down. But with the Packers don't look incredible, in my personal opinion. Having watching them, they don't look unbeatable. They look very beatable, is what I'm trying to say. They look like a beatable team. And if you beat the Packers twice, then you're only 2 games back. So if you were to win every single game, and the Packers were to win every single game but yours, which won't happen, but the 2 against you, which won't happen, then
it'd be a tie.
Are you level? It's a tie.
It'd be a tie.
Yeah, exactly. So you've just got to beat the Packers really, and then just match them blow for blow on the schedule and stuff like that. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom for the Vikings. I still think you have a chance, because the Packers look beatable. Now, do the Packers look beatable because they're rusty and they're starting to get with it a little bit? That's a different question that I'm sure will be answered in the coming weeks.
What gives me little faith is that winning is a habit, and the Vikings are learning the habit of losing the close games right now.
It's like the Chargers last year. You're the Chargers last year. Oh, lovely. Look, the Vikings are a good team. The Browns are a really good team. When you put them roster for roster, you would say the Browns are going to win that game a lot of the time. And I think defensively it was encouraging to see. And Cook's just coming off an injury. Maybe Cook was a bit knocked up, and that's why he left a lot of stuff out on the field. I mean, I don't think this is all doom and gloom for the Vikings, and I don't think it's the end yet. One more loss is going to be huge, though. They really need to win big now. Like this.
Well, if they don't beat the Lions next week, then they don't deserve to even freaking play.
That's it. That's it. Like that's the thing. That's the thing.
So,
and it wasn't helped by a lot of refereeing calls. Your game,
no,
was it?
It wasn't even the game. Like there was an awful holding call on Kendricks in the end zone, but like whatever. I'm not going to say that lost in the game, because the Browns also got an awful call against them on a roughing the passer where, Baker Mayfield got maybe sneezed on. You know what I mean? There was bad call, but refereeing was awful, and it's getting worse. And the Tampa game had awful refereeing. Your game had
the Tampa game
refereeing.
Had some really bad refereeing.
And it was both ways. It wasn't just one, because the second I text you, like, this ain't shitting on the Cowboys, but I feel like the refs are keeping you in, it flipped. And they were, you know what I mean? The calls started going awful the other way. It was just, there was some awful calls the last 2 weeks, and the refereeing is horrible, and I don't have the answer, but the NFL needs to do something to fix it.
Yeah, it's let the guys play is the answer to fix it. Like, coming at this from like a European point of view, where in our sports, it's the responsibility of the tackler to look after the other player. So in rugby, we've spoken about this before. It's the tackler's responsibility to make sure the other guy is safe, no matter what the other guy is doing. You're not allowed to jump into tackles if you're carrying the ball in rugby. But other than that, it's the tackler's responsibility no matter what. Now you can keep that and still play hard if you've seen rugby. Like you can still play hard by just playing smart and encouraging players to play smart rather than just trying to kill each other. Then they'll be able to kind of let them play a little bit more. But the answer is let them play and be consistent with your calls. So if they decide they're not going to let them play this year, which I think would be a travesty for the league, then you've got to be consistent with that all the way through. You can't allow push-offs. You can't allow massive hits and then the next half just get rid of them, because the idea is if you get a rough call, it'll even itself out over the year if people are being consistent. I can't see what was wrong with the Kazee hit in the Cowboys game. Shoulder to shoulder, perfectly timed, absolutely massive hit. And there was nothing wrong with it. It was just a brilliant hit and some brilliant defensive play. And you can't get rid of that in the game. There was also the final drive for Mac Jones going down the field. There was I think it was a holding call, pass interference, and it was just a great play by Whitehead, I think it was. It was just a fantastic play, and they called pass interference on it. So you're not letting these fantastic defensive plays happen. And we love watching fantastic defensive plays. It's what gets every fan out of their seat the most, is amazing defensive plays, because we're so used to seeing those 80-yard bombs now, those 80-yard touchdowns. So a massive defensive play, you can't get rid of that. And they need to be consistent, and they need to let the guys play a bit more.
They need somebody in New York in those refs' ears too, because in that game you're talking about with that final drive, when you go for the ball, and I think it was Hunter Henry, but maybe, or whatever. He goes through him to get the ball, but he's cutting while I'm going this way.
Yeah,
and we
that's
collide.
the call.
Right.
Yeah.
I was saying that's the call you're talking about. That is not the defensive player's fault, and it's hard.
If anything, that's
defense.
offensive pass interference. If anything, it's offensive pass interference, because he's going to go get that ball, and Hunter Henry's going the other way. Great play by Hunter Henry.
In New York in their ear saying, pick that flag up.
Do you want to know what the best way to increase consistency is? It's to make these referees professional. It's to make this their full-time job. And I think it's an absolute shocking thing that the NFL don't do that. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed. And I don't think fans can really have a massive go at the referees individually when this isn't their full-time job, because the NFL won't pay them.
Never have we truly needed true blame to blame you, though. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree. I'll still scream and shout at the referees, and then I'll remember that they're part-time after the game. Is the thing. Now, all other professional sports that I know, all the referees are professional. Rugby's referees are incredible. They're like, the whole point of rugby, the best way to win in rugby is whichever side cheats the best will win a game of rugby, because there's so much melee in and all of that stuff. It's impossible to see. But the referees now, because it's their full-time job, can look out for all these cheating tricks, because they can analyze each player individually before the game, so they know what to look for. And I know NFL referees do know the schemes that people are going to run, like where they're going to need to be in, the best players and all that kind of stuff. But if it's your full-time job, you can really look into everything, and you can get everybody together to correct stuff every single week.
Well, the last thing I'll say on the refs, and this was just an idea, maybe you start going after ex-players and training them to be refs too, because that might actually help the reffing of the game.
That happens in football all the time, soccer, football. That happens all the time. They're all ex-players.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. But on to your Cowboys, Maddie. You have to feel good. And actually, this game, even though we both picked the Cowboys, proves to me that what I've been saying since the beginning for the Cowboys is true. If you feed that running game and don't make Dak try to put the fucking team on his back, Dak threw what, for a hair under 200 yards, but had a ton of touchdowns, had a good game.
180 yards and 4 touchdowns, which is 27.
He had a really good game. Didn't have to put the team on his back. This team is its best when it feeds the beast of the running game.
I think Dak's now 27-0 when they run it more times than they throw it.
See, okay,
27-0.
Feed the
The
beast.
reason for that is when they don't run it, they're screwed. And the reason they haven't been running it is because Zeke hasn't been Zeke until this year. But the games before, the games running up, you saw Zeke working up, and Tony Pollard taking a bit of the stress. But yesterday, Ezekiel Elliott was Ezekiel Elliott, and he was making jump cuts. He was looking sharp, and he ran for 114 yards, something around there, against the best running defense in the NFL. They could be the best running defense in the NFL because they've played the Jets and the Saints and whoever.
As for the running, though, and this isn't the player's fault, but Coach Clapp did it sometimes, and now McCarthy does it. You go away from the run too soon when it's not working, because sometimes if you watch running teams, it's not so much the yards you pick up, it's the number of attempts to keep that defense honest. And I think sometimes McCarthy does a disservice to Dak because they get away from the run too quick, or Kellen Mond, whoever you want, or Kellen Moore, whoever you want to blame.
It's Kellen Moore, but
he did in the first McCarthy game. Did it in Green Bay too.
Them. Yeah. It's Kellen Moore, but in the first game, Dak audibled out of, I think it was out of like 14 pass plays or something ridiculous like that. He audibled out. And that's because he's playing against the Tampa Bay front. So they're not going to make any yards on the run there. Nobody's made any yards on the run there all year. But they looked great, man. And I just want to talk about the defense on this, because we know the offense is stacked. We know what they need to do. Just run the ball behind Zach Martin and you'll be fine. Steele looks really good on a right tackle as well. Much better than we thought he was going to, look. But the Cowboys are taking the ball away. This is something that they haven't done at all. This is something that I haven't been alive while the Cowboys have been taking the ball away from other teams. I can't think of a time where it's really happened a lot. Trayvon Diggs is a monster. And when they took him out of the game, you could see the problem. Like, I thought we were going to lose that game because I'm a pessimist when they took Trayvon Diggs out. And I hope that's just to rest him for the next game.
Yeah, and if it is, it's probably just a tweak, because you didn't see him getting worked on the sidelines or anything like that, so you probably don't have to worry. He doesn't seem to be one of those guys who's going to get himself in trouble either. Kind of the opposite of his brother is not going to let his mouth get into trouble. So I don't think you have anything to worry about with when it comes to Diggs is balling. Diggs.
He's a superstar.
Well, Diggs and Parsons are the glowing young pieces that you can build around. And that's not to take away from other players. I'm just saying the young guys that for the next 10 years are going to carry this defense. You got two cornerstones right there.
Yeah, and just remember, D-Law's not been playing because of injury. And Kelvin Joseph, who's our second round pick at cornerback hasn't been playing. And Anthony Brown has improved in the past 2 games, but he's still our weak link in the team. So we're one piece away from a really good defense, as far as I can see. And they take the ball away. It's just so great when you have a high octane offense with a defense that takes the ball away. They let up quite a decent amount of yardage. Like, their yardage given up is a decent lick. They give up some of the most yardage in the NFL, but then they take the ball away before you can score. So that's a massive plus. And it's just great to see the Cowboys are a complete team, and the Carolina Panthers are still good. From what we saw, the Carolina Panthers are still a good team. They didn't just roll over and die. They're going to fight till the end, but the Cowboys, that's one of the most complete performances I've seen.
Well, the best you can ask for out of a defense in today's NFL with the rules and the way they line up is there's no such thing as a shutdown defense anymore. It's a bend but don't break defense. So I'm willing to let you get 3, but try to turn over the ball and give up some yards, but stop you from getting the end zone. That's how good and great NFL defenses are now. It's no longer the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s of lock you down. So that's exactly where you need to go. And I know it drives defensive-minded people insane, but the NFL's different than it used to be. That's the defense.
Yeah. And it's amazing what you can do with a pass rush. I think it's the pass rush is the thing that's changed the team, and that's Micah Parsons. Now, obviously, they've played two pretty weak O-lines. Like if Carolina have a weakness, it's their offensive line. That's where their weakness is. It's what they need to fix. So we'll see how it goes when they play a team with a better offensive line.
Well, and that's it. Going up against your defense, though, I think is proof that Carolina wasn't 3-0 good.
They're not 3-0 good, but they are better than what most people think. I still think they could make a run for the playoffs in the NFC South if they get a few things to go their way, because their offense is real. And it was a third quarter, really. That was it.
But at best, Sam Darnold played really good, and at best, he's Teddy Bridgewater. So I'm not sure, like, where Carolina's selling the.
I don't think that's
I'm still not sold on Sam Darnold. I mean, he does everything Teddy did for them. It's not like it's an upgrade or something. So you just moved laterally to me at best. So I think they're still going to be looking for a Deshaun Watson or something like that moving forward.
I would say Sam Darnold's a bit more dynamic than Teddy Bridgewater, but this is an argument that we've had before. If you want to see that argument, then go check out our video on it. It was done in the off season. And talking about the NFC South, let's stay there and talk about Belichick versus Brady, the Bucks versus the New England Patriots, and Brady wins on his return home.
Brady looked like. He was very uncomfortable for a while at first. He was making bad overthrows, and the moment seemed to, like, at some point, it was like Brady was feeling the coming home probably more than whatever. But in the beginning, I will say it looked like Mac Jones was feeling it too, but I was very impressed with Mac Jones. And I think, again, we said this before, but it just proves he landed in the perfect spot for Mac Jones.
Yeah, 100%. I was impressed with Matt Jones as well. I think Tom Brady let that emotion get to him more than a Super Bowl, because that has never happened to him before, whereas Super Bowls have happened to him, 10 times now? So so that emotion to him is bigger than any Super Bowl or anything like that. And I think the issue was everybody was expecting them to landslide the Patriots. I don't think that helped anything whatsoever. And they didn't look incredible, the Bucs. They're still not clicking. Their run game's not hammering away, and their offensive line's not looking as good. But
their offensive line is great at pass blocking, but not run blocking. And I'm not worried about their defense yet, because literally they were down to 0 cornerbacks. They got like 8 guys out on that defense and then Winfield goes down, and the other corner went down. I think they're just fighting. That defense is really fighting injury right now.
They're just fighting to stay. They're fighting to stay in it, to get to win the division and then go from there. That's where they are. And it would help if their offense was doing a bit more for them and just clicking a bit better. It just doesn't look right to me, their offense. And I think that was just because Tom Brady just let the moment get to him, which is weird to say about Tom Brady, who's won however many Super Bowls he's won now. So it's weird to say the moment got to him, but that moment definitely got to him. And with all the stuff that's come out with what his family was saying and the book that's come out. And did you think that the hug after the game was a little bit frosty between Belichick and Brady as well?
Yeah, but that's just Belichick.
I know that's just Belichick.
But gone guy. So
I know that's just Belichick, but I think we've seen that Brady's a more sociable person than we ever gave him credit for. Like, I think he really lets that kind of stuff get to him. And I think all of that kind of stuff just came out when he was trying to really zip the ball over. And that's why it was all overthrows. There were never any underthrows or anything, because he was going for it all. But Mac Jones is in the perfect spot, and you could see the kind of thing that happened to Brady. Now, I'm not saying that Mac Jones is Brady, but the kind of thing that happens to Brady where he improves over time in a state of constant professionalism and constant perfectionism and that kind of stuff. And you can see him improving to the point where Brady gets to where his brain is outworking defenses a lot of the time rather than his talent, because Mac Jones can throw any ball he wants to, as long as it's not Patrick Mahomes crazy sidearms and stuff like that. He's just working on beating defenses before the ball's even snapped now. That's where he's playing.
And I know people use these terms really loosely, but I did hear a couple times now that Mac Jones has a photographic memory or an eidetic memory, which I'm not sure exactly the difference, but I've heard both.
Yeah, and he was really impressive. Like, it looked like he was going to drive them down the field to win the game at the end, didn't it? It looked like it was looking Brady-esque at the end, and then it just didn't happen for them. But that's like, the Bucs should have wiped the floor with them, and they didn't. The Patriots were playing with a lot of emotion on defense. Matthew Judon just popped off the screen every single time, and they played really well, and that's their Super Bowl. That's Jones their Super Bowl this year.
Balling at corner. He was injured. They call a timeout so he can stay on the field, and he makes a huge play on AB in the end zone. I mean, that's impressive from Jones. I was just impressed with that guy.
Yeah, and I just think they play the Patriots way just up a couple of notches, where normally they're not the most emotional team. They're more clinical, but this week they let emotion override, and sometimes that's a good thing, and it proved to be a good thing for them. But Brady wins. Brady wins that game, even though it feels like it was closer than everybody thought it would be. Brady has now beaten all 32 teams in the NFL.
I think the only person who called that game right was AJ Hawk.
Where he just said it was going to be close. He
said that the Bucs will win, but they will not cover the spread. And he was right. And I don't think anybody else saw that.
Skip Bayless said they wouldn't cover the spread.
Oh, I don't watch Skip because Skip Bayless is a moron. But yeah.
He had to change his mind because he let Shannon buy him out for 2 crates of Mountain Dew rather than
that, from 2 to 4 or 4 to 2.
Yeah, he went from 4 to 2 because Skip wasn't confident that they were going to win necessarily, or not cover the spread at least.
So on to a game that I think kind of shocked everybody.
Nobody
called the Jets Titans, but let me give you a couple stats, Maddie, before we get into this. So if I told you before you saw the score of the game that Ryan Tannehill would throw for 298 and a touchdown, Henry would run for 157 and a touchdown, Zach Wilson throws for 297, 2 touchdowns and an interception, and the top rusher had 38 yards for the Jets, would you think the Jets would win this game?
I don't understand how the Titans lost that game.
Yeah, me either.
I'm bewildered. I don't understand it at all. The AFC South is the worst division in football, and nobody can change my mind. I posted
maybe the NFC North, but okay.
No, it's not. I posted that in the group, and everybody can go argue with me as much as they want, and I'll be very happy to politely argue with you back. But the AFC South is dreadful because they're all so inconsistent. You don't know what they're going to get from it. Like the Colts beat the Dolphins yesterday. They've been terrible, and then they just
the 1 week I quit picking them. As soon as I stopped picking the Colts,
they have so they have the Jags, who are terrible. They have the Texans, who got shut out and got beat by 40 points, 40-0. They have the Titans, who just lost to the Jets, and they have the Colts, who nobody knows if the Colts are good or not, and nobody seems to know if the Titans are real or not. And it's just surreal. It's a really weird division. But I still don't understand how the Jets won that game or the Titans lost that game. And fair play to Zach Wilson. Fair play to Zach Wilson. That's it.
Yeah,
after last week.
Well, another game that I don't know if it was so shocking, but I didn't expect to go the way it went, was the Cardinals versus the Rams. But it was just a weird game where the Rams defense did not look right to me.
The Cardinals are real, is what I'm going to say from that. But the Rams.
See, and I think if they play each other 10 times, there's no way that game turns out that way, but maybe 2.
I think it's more the fact that it's a 17-point difference rather than the Cardinals winning is what surprises me the most, because if you told me that the Rams kept the Cardinals to under 17 points, I wouldn't have found that surprising either.
Or if the Cardinals won by 3 or 7, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I was hoping the win doesn't surprise me. It's that the way after watching that game last night on replay, it just like their defense just did some uncharacteristic things. And I'm not saying that the Cardinals weren't good enough to beat them. Like you said, it was the way it went.
Yeah, it's like the Rams had their Super Bowl. The Rams had their regular season Super Bowl last week. Against them beating the Bucks is their Super Bowl for this regular season. And it's almost like they took their eye off the ball when the Cardinals are almost harder to defend than the Bucks because of the way the Cardinals attack you. Like, you have to work on your scheme. You have to change your scheme when you face the Cardinals. Now, it doesn't mean that the Cardinals are better offensively than the Bucks, even though I actually personally think that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It's just they make you change the way that you play because of the way that they're able to play on offense. And I just think the Cardinals are real, man. I think people need to get that the Cardinals are good. I know it's a weird thought.
I don't think it's like for me, it wasn't that if the Cardinals are good. It's like you know me, my biggest question was coaching, and I'm not worried about their coaching at this point. Yeah. But it's like, I know Kyler Murray can play, and I know like that they have a lot of weapons, but just the way that I just felt like the Rams didn't look like the Rams. And like I said, it wasn't shocking that the Rams lost to me. It was the way it went down. So like I said, I think if they played 10 times, you don't get a 17-point win, but 1 or 2 times out of 10 games.
I almost think if they switch the games around as well, like the Rams play the Cardinals last week and then they play the Bucks this week, then the results would be different. Like, you just have a feeling that the Rams kind of took their eye off the ball defensively. And if you do that to the Cardinals, then they're going to tear you a new one.
Well, and then one last game I got to ask you about, Maddie, the Seahawks versus the Niners, because how does that game turn out that way when Russell Wilson only has 149 passing yards and the Seahawks have their top rusher has 44 yards? And I know people are going to go, well, it's because Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, but Trey Lance threw for 157 and 2 touchdowns without playing a whole game. So I don't know what they asked. That's another game that I watched. And by the end of the game, I'm like, how did Seattle win this?
The 49ers are just injured. Well,
I get that, but watching the game, It's like, this should have never happened with the stat line and what I saw going on. So at the end, you're scratching your head going, wait, how did the Seahawks pull this out?
They're an organization that just seems permanently injured. Like, there's something they need to hire different physios. They need to train differently. They need to just do something differently to stop all their players from getting injured. All the scouts need to assess injury problems a bit more when they're drafting players and all of that. And the Seahawks have Russell Wilson, who plays big when the game needs him to play big. It's not necessarily he always throws for 300, 400 yards. It's he comes out when the Seahawks need a touchdown. And I think it's fair to say the Seahawks kind of needed that win as the 49ers needed that win as well. But the 49ers are just, you wouldn't be surprised if they just came bottom of that division the way that division's turning out. I don't know either. This whole week was weird to me. It's why I went.
No, and to go back to your point in the beginning, the only reason the Vikings still have a chance is if you go through this and you're looking at like schedules and different things, or records and different things like that. Seahawks 2-2, Washington 2-2, the Bears 2-2, 49ers 2-2, Saints 2-2. You know what I mean? like. There's
it's
all
like
these teams, nobody's really pulling away yet.
Yeah, it's like the only teams that went 3-0 were the Broncos, who got absolutely smashed by the Ravens, which we didn't talk about, but I said that was going to happen.
I still think they would have won if Teddy doesn't get hurt, but that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah. But, and then the Panthers, who just got beat by the Cowboys. So it's a close. The NFC is close, and divisional ties is really close. And the fact that there's an extra game puts a lot of people
like I
still
said,
in play.
I'm scared about the mentality, the losing, because winning becomes a habit.
Definitely. And definitely. And that's what might have happened to the 49ers as well.
Super Bowl championship teams figure out how to win 2 of those 3 losses the Vikings had. You know what I mean? So
and the 49ers spent all last season losing as well, and that could carry over. That could have carried over to this season. It's just not like there's something wrong in the water in San Francisco. Like players are getting too injured all the time, and they really need to.
It might be Trey Lance time, depending on Jimmy G's calf.
Trey Lance looked okay. I mean, it would give them a running game now. They seem to have lost their running game a little bit just because all of their running backs are getting injured. Like, what was that? The guy that they were playing, that's their 6th running back that they're on this year.
Yeah.
And he was playing G League football, not G League, XFL, G League maybe, for the Cincinnati team, and then he got picked up for the practice squad. No, he was in Tampa playing for their XFL team in Tampa, and then he was on the practice squad for the Bengals, and then the 49ers picked him up to play this year, and it's crazy, man, and they just need to not get as injured, and there needs to be a change, to be perfectly honest. And then tonight, it's Raiders versus Chargers, and that's a really big game as well.
Way to read my mind, Maddie. I was just going to say, I'm excited. It's a decent Monday night game where I feel like, even though this last Thursday night game turned out to be very entertaining, they've been giving us really bad matchups for Thursday night. But Monday night's been really nice lately.
Monday nights have all been really good. Yeah. And this Raiders-Chargers game, man, like, this is a big deal. We'll see if the Raiders are really good or whether they're just on a hot streak, or we'll see if Justin Herbert's got that winning mentality carrying over from the Kansas City game last week. This is where a lot of questions get asked. And I think a lot of questions have been answered this week. And there's one last question to be answered. Yeah.
Are the Raiders for real, or are they the Fugazi, like they start out hot every year and then fall off, right? Like, I mean, that's
and
the real question. I don't think either of us are questioning, can Justin Herbert play? Can Derek Carr play? The answer is yes. It's just...
do they know how to win? Are they both 2 players who know how to win? And we'll find out.
I'm more worried about their coaches than I am them as players.
Yeah. It's a weird thing to say when John Gruden's sat there,
Right. It's just, I love Gruden, but I've always been like, he does weird shit. And sometimes I feel like the NFL passed him by, and then he'll have weeks where you're like, oh no, John Gruden's right in it. It's just really weird to me, but I don't know. That might be they had to start from complete garbage and rebuild because they couldn't afford to keep Khalil Mack, and they had to mortgage people to get to Vegas. So I get it's a weird rebuilding. So I'm just going to sit back, give Chucky this year before I give my final determination. But Gruden is my biggest question in Oakland.
Yeah, and we'll just see. Well, this game will answer a lot of those questions. I'm still backing the Chargers for this one. And I don't think my mind will change before. Usually my mind changes about 3 or 4 times before kickoff every time a game like this comes up. But I'm pretty confident in the Chargers winning to take me to 10-6 for this week, which is a bad week for us. A lot of surprises coming out of the hat.
Well, all right, guys. There's our week 4 review. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Coming up later this week, as long as Facebook starts working again. Otherwise, go to YouTube. You can always find us on YouTube. We'll give you the week 5 preview, and we'll let you know what we thought of tonight's game. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. One world, one love. Deuces.
Cheerio.